for joining us. Thank you all for being here. I hope you are all well and enjoying a little bit of the summer. This is your chance as we get settled. We let you for a couple of minutes to look at your friends. First of all, don't be afraid to turn your camera on if you are wearing clothing. If you are not, spare us. You could see who you recognize out there. But then oh, great, we do have somebody with the shirt off. Michael, get your shirt on. That's a first. But yes, I do recommend going to speaker view once we officially get started, so you could really focus on our speakers, and it's going to be an exciting conversation. We hope that you've all already seen the film. And if not, it's available, I think, for a couple of more hours. Morgan, till what time is it available?
Till midnight.
Till midnight.
The link.
If you have yet to complete it, this is your last chance to see this very exclusive screening, and we're going to get started in just a moment. So we'll let a few final people join, and then I'll welcome everyone, tell you what's planned for tonight. Okay, so now I would change to speaker view, and we're going to get started. I'm Isaac Zablocki. I'm the Director of Film Programs at the Marlene Meyerson JCC Manhattan. I am extremely privileged to be here tonight, and I am really excited to host this conversation for this very special presentation of They Ain't Ready for Me. And I have a lot of questions, but more importantly, I think I want the community to be a part of this conversation. This film has gotten more and more timely somehow, and I feel like this is, I think this was a film that we were planning on screening. I think I mentioned it to Brad a while ago. We had plans to screen it, and now we feel all the more glad that this was able to come together in this short time. I want to give a big thank you to the distributor of the film, Neil Friedman from Menemsha, who might be with us tonight. I'll click through our Hollywood squares in a minute. But I'll also share with you that coming up, our next two events are No Small Matters, a film that we just added. It's going to be available for a week, and we're having a conversation on July 1st for that film. And then we're also screening, also for an exclusive short amount of time, the film Tahara. And we're going to have a talk back after both of those films. We'll share with you when that talk back is. It's this Tuesday, the talk back for Tahara. Fabulous films, much more coming up also through July. We have programmed most of July already, so please be joining us for films virtually. The JCC Film Department keeps working. Now it gives me huge pleasure. Before I introduce our speakers, I want to thank our partners. I want to thank the Marlene Meyerson's Center for Social Responsibility, who we worked together on our Cinematters Festival, and we're really excited that they were a part of this program and have been doing so much amazing work in the last few weeks, as well as JCC Harlem, who also have been doing amazing work. And now it gives me great pleasure to introduce, first of all, I'll start with the director of the film, who's a good friend of the JCC. I think we've screened the last film we screened of his was Tree Man, which I loved, about the tree salesman on Christmas. Kinderblock 66, we also screened. And he is the director of They Ain't Ready for Me, Brad Rothschild. Brad, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here tonight.
And if you've seen the film, then she hardly needs an introduction. And she is really speaks for herself. And we're honored to have here the subject of the film, Tamar Manasseh. Tamar, thank you so much for being here.
Can you hear me? Hi, everyone.
Loud and clear. So I have a ton of questions, but again, if the audience wants to ask questions, please put your questions in the chat. And then we will, at the right time, let you know that we are unmuting your mic so you can ask a question. Look out for our chats to you. But let me start by asking how this all came together. How did you guys meet? Where did a bad boy from the Upper West Side meet a nice girl from Chicago?
So the story starts in October of 2016. I was reading an article, I think it was on the Jewish Telegraphic Agency's website, and it was called Black Rabbinical Student Takes Aim at Gun Violence in Chicago. And I looked at that headline and I was intrigued immediately. And I read an article and an interview with this woman named Tamar Manasseh, who is doing this incredible work on the south side of Chicago to reduce gun violence. And I read the article and her personality jumped out at me. And I thought, this woman, I really want to talk to her. I want to meet her, and I want to find out if she's interested in doing a film. So I reached out to her via social media and her organization's website, and I introduced myself and I said, I'm a documentary filmmaker and I read about you and I'd really like to talk to you about a project, a documentary film about you. And needless to say, I didn't get a response. So I kept trying, and finally I got an email back, and the email said, I think my life is about as interesting as watching the paint dry. So thank you for your interest, but I don't think so. And I wrote back, with all due respect, I disagree. And we started a dialogue, and we spoke on the phone a couple of times, but still, you know, I would check in with her, and sometimes she would respond and sometimes she wouldn't. And I finally wrote her a note and I said, listen, I'm gonna, in a very non-threatening way, I'm going to continue to cyberstalk you until you agree to.
If I had a quarter for every time a dude told me that.
So she said, okay, go ahead, which I figured like that was the only entree I really needed. I'm like, okay, so you're saying there's a chance is basically the message. And then I think it was probably in the winter of 2017, she sent me a chat on Facebook and she said, I'm in Staten Island if you want to meet me. So I said, give me 2 hours and I'll get out there. And I dropped what I was doing and I went to Staten Island and I met her. And we sat down together and we spoke for a long time. And at the end, she said, yeah, if you want to make the movie, I guess it's okay. And that was it. And then that summer, I went back and forth to Chicago all summer filming what became They Ain't Ready for Me.
And
That's how
Tamar,
that went down.
yeah, let's get your version of that story.
I got a stalker. And my stalker wanted to make a movie about me and I didn't understand why. And I was like, dude, this is really weird. But I mean, he was one of the nicer stalkers. So I, you know, like I would entertain those phone calls sometimes. And then on a snowy afternoon in February of 2017, my flight got delayed and I was stuck in Staten Island. And I was like, you know what? If you want to talk to me, I'm in Staten Island. So he says it's going to take me like 2 hours to get there. Like, I'll see you in 2 hours. And I remember thinking, you know what? He's just not motivated enough to see me. Why 2 hours? But that was before I became kind of a New York City native. And I didn't understand just how far what I was asking. I didn't understand like Staten Island was the distance from like Indianapolis to Chicago. Like I didn't get that. I thought it was like a lot closer. So I was kind of like, I don't like this guy. 2 hours. Like I just have time like that to just wait. But he showed up, and when he showed up, he was just kind of, it was a refreshing thing. He was kind of, he surprised me. He was a lot of things that I didn't expect. So I was kind of taken off guard. So I was a bit intrigued because first of all, he wasn't crazy, and I thought he was. So there, A, proved me wrong with that one. Then B, a lot of the stereotypes and the ideas and the questions that people sometimes have about Jews of African descent. He didn't necessarily have those. And then the ones that he did have, they didn't come from a place where he was being judgmental or where he was trying to bring us to some sort of a conclusion about my identity. He just really wanted to know. And he actually said, sometimes people are just curious. They aren't being obnoxious, they just want to know. And nobody, as simple as that is, no one has ever explained it to me that way, that simply. And I mean, like, I dug that. That was a good thing it was a beautiful thing for him to do that. And I mean, then he was like really hilarious. So it worked out fine with me. So at that point, I'm like, yeah, let's do it. We can do it. I mean, if you're not too scared to come to the hood, we can do the movie.
Wow, that sounds like every film that we've ever brought here. I'm just kidding. That is really unique. Let me ask you guys. So the film itself, one of the things I like about it is how the film actually is told. That it's not like, here we are telling the story of Tamar's life. Look at this person, she's Black, she's Jewish, she's doing these amazing things. It's not at all. It's just actually we're kind of engaging with the world around her over a few days. How long? Why did you choose to tell the story in that way? Brad, let's start with you.
So the story kind of evolved as we were filming. And, my approach to making the film was essentially, I'm here to document her life. So however she is going to allow me to access her life, that's my entree into the story. And the day before I started filming, I called Tamar and I said, I'm coming into Chicago tomorrow. Can I come to you at like 10:30 in the morning and we can start? And she said, why don't you come at noon? And I'm flying in from New York on a really early flight. And I'm thinking, what am I going to do with myself for the whole morning? And I said, if it's okay, I'm just going to come to you. I'm going to put a mic on you and the camera's going to roll, but you don't need to talk to me. You don't need to look at me. I just want you to get comfortable with the idea of a camera here. And she said, that sounds fine. So I show up with the camera, actually camera woman that day. And Tamar opens the door and she says, let's go sit on the back porch. So we put the mic on her, the camera's rolling, and she just starts talking for 2 hours. I mean,
wow.
Literally 2 hours, yeah, right?
Wow.
And then she said, we finished that. She finished saying what she had to say. And then she said, okay, let's go to the block. All right. And then, so every day in the summer, she's on that block. So I pretty much realized this is how the shooting is going to go. We're going to come to Tamar. We're going to hang out with her in her house in the morning. And then we're going to go to the block in the afternoon. And whatever is going to happen on the block is what's going to happen. And, when you make a film like this, you don't know what is going to happen on any given day, over the course of however many weeks. You have no idea. So we just sort of played it by ear. But every day from 4 to 8, we knew we were going to be on that block and we knew things were going to happen. We just didn't know what was going to happen. And that's kind of how it evolved.
Tamar, for you, I want to jump into kind of a little bit of the deeper questions here as this goes on. So the film, in some ways, I mean, there's so much going on in the film. I mean, there's you, there's Mask, there's the trip you take with your mother. Let me start by asking, what has happened to you since the film? Where are you now in your life? What has developed?
Everything. Like I've lived 10 different lives since then. So right now, I sent you the photo on that lot. Basically what happens out there on that block is the reason I went there has changed a million times. What it was in the beginning, it's evolved so far since then. And it seems like every day it evolves even more. to really fix problems, you have to be in them. You can't march through them. You can't do that. You have to actually sit in it, live in it for a while to understand it, because you have to watch it unfold. So in watching it, that's the school that we're building. So where that vacant lot is in the movie, this is what that lot looks like now. As of today, this is what it looks like. So this is the first of its kind. It's an elementary school. Well, it's a school. It's a school. It's called the Block Academy. And once again, let me go back, because this started with us going to that corner because a mom was murdered there. And actually yesterday was the anniversary of her death. And we went there to just basically stop people from being murdered. How do we stop young people from killing each other? How do we stop it? So the idea was, hey, you know, you take a group of moms and you go sit here, you're going to disrupt everything that happens, because kids hate for their privacy to be invaded. So that's what we're going to do. We're just going to go and invade everybody's privacy. That's what we're going to do. We're going to go watch them. So what ended up happening is conversations and relationships. You have all these conversations and you start to form these relationships and you start to understand why people do the things that they do. And so now that you understand, that you're starting to understand why they do the things that they do, what happens is at that point, you can start to address each of those issues. So I came to understand what violence was made of. I'm sorry, 1 second. I have a little dog. He wants in on the conversation. 1 second. Okay, no, never mind. But you kind of began to see all of the different layers of everything that creates violence. Violence is not just guns. It's not just shooting. It's not just that. Poverty is a very violent thing. The way people live is very violent. It's a very violent thing. When you put people in a position where all they can do is things that are dangerous or illegal to survive, that is a very dangerous, very violent situation you've put them in. You force them to become people who have to live a certain way just to survive, in a way that nobody else does, in such a way that on Yom Kippur, and when we do Yom Kippur on the corner, that these people actually pray with me. They actually do confession, this confession thing. We have a talk about teshuvah, and we have a talk about returning and repentance and atonement and what that day means, and that they can be forgiven for doing the very basic things that they do to survive every day. Not many of us have to atone for what we do to make a living, but these people do. And so what I started to do was try to address the problems that created the violence. So we tried to address the food insecurity by serving dinner every day. We try to address homelessness. We try to address substance abuse. We try to address all of that. So we decided, Chicago closed down all of the public high schools in that area 3 years ago. And what it did was kind of create a vacuum, because there were so many kids who didn't want to go outside of the area and cross gang boundaries to go to the schools that the city wanted them to go to. So they just opted to not go to school at all. So you didn't have kids who dropped out. You had kids who never actually started high school. So it's kind of like, what do those kids do? They can't fill out resumes. Most of them aren't even old enough to work. So what do? That gives them 24 hours worth of air and opportunity to be murdered or to murder. That's how to try to survive for that long. And that's really difficult for a 14-year-old, no skills. So what I decided to do, since it was so many kids that wouldn't be going to school, said, you know, we have to be out here year round, but Chicago winters are brutal. So how can we be on a corner in January in Chicago? We need a structure of some sort. So because I mean, like, insomnia is my friend. I've made friends make peace with it at this point. I watch a lot of HGTV. And so 3 o'clock in the morning, insomnia meets HGTV, and boom, you got schools made out of shipping containers. That's just how it goes. You can do this. Why not? That's nothing crazy. I can do that. Let's start a school. We're going to build them out of shipping containers. So at 3 a.m., that sounded like.
Sorry to interrupt. Somebody's asking here in the chat, how does this get funded?
We're like the Bernie Sanders of community groups. Like every donation is like $28, something like that. Like people just donate. That's how we survive, from donations.
Sorry.
But the thing is, we recognized once again that there's too much free time for these kids to not be in school and not be at work and not have anything to do. This leaves a lot of opportunity for really big, really dangerous things to happen to them. So we started working on the school. So I'm kind of skipping along here to move it along, but Corona happened. When the coronavirus hit in March, we were actually building a trade school for young adults, for teenagers and young adults to actually learn a trade. So we were kind of teaching to the job. And Corona happened. So now we had to put that on hold because now we have all these elementary school kids who all live in a neighborhood and their parents are essential workers, right? But they are very poorly paid essential workers. So they're the essential workers who deliver your Uber Eats or your Grubhub or your Instacarts. When you're at home, they're the ones out still risking their lives every day. So what do they do with their kids? And you don't want mothers to say, you know, to make the choice of having to leave their 11-year-old, their 7-year-old and their 4-year-old in the care of their 11-year-old because they had to go to work and they can't take off or they won't be able to pay their bills. So because school was their childcare. So with that being gone, then what do you do? So we decided, hey, we have to open up now because those people need somewhere to bring their kids because we don't just want kids at home and alone and not being fed and, waiting on mom to come home or dad to come home or mom and dad to come home. But we don't want kids to be at home alone. So we opened up in March. So we had kids. So then the stay-at-home order went into effect. But that revealed another problem, yet another layer to this. The kids didn't have internet access. A lot of them didn't have it. So how do you expect for them to do e-learning if they don't have internet access? So now we have to figure out, how do we do that? So Comcast gives us some sort of deal. They give some sort of deal where these kids can get internet access for $10 or for free or whatever. So then this creates another problem because now they have internet, but they don't have the devices to actually do the e-learning with. So this creates another problem for us. So now we have to do a device drive so we can make sure that these kids who are supposed to be doing e-learning, who are assigned all these e-learning programs at school, they can actually do them and they can actually keep up. So we did a device drive, but then once we got the devices, therein lies another problem. Because now your kid can get e-learning, your kid can do this and keep up with their classwork and they can interact with their teacher online. But the thing is, a lot of the parents they have learning disabilities themselves that were never addressed. They had learning issues themselves that were never actually addressed. And so you have a lot of parents who can't help their kids with their classwork. And they get frustrated and they're not going to stay on them about it. And then next thing you know, kids are falling even further behind than they were behind when school first started. So now we have to address that. So we have to make sure that the kids in our neighborhood have internet, that they have devices, that they have the support that they need to do the e-learning, to do the work that they're supposed to be doing. So we established something called the Study Buddy program. And we launched 2 weeks ago. And it's basically where you can remotely sign up from anywhere in the world to be a tutor, to tutor these kids who have been affected by COVID, because it's going to be an educational crisis, kind of like the healthcare crisis that COVID created. It's going to create an educational crisis. Right now, most parents in Chicago, I'm not sure about everybody else, but most parents in Chicago have no idea where their kids are going to school in the fall, if they're going to school in the fall. They don't know. And so you have kids, if they're falling behind, how do these kids catch up? So we created the program where if we give you a device, we partner with you and you get a study buddy, your family gets a study buddy, and that study buddy has remote access to your kid's computer and they can actually help your kids with their work in real time. So we make sure that your kids aren't falling behind, that they're staying at or exceeding grade level, they're making all the hallmarks they should be making, that they are still on course to graduate whenever school opens back up, if it ever does. But we want them to be prepared for the world after COVID. And it's kind of like, I feel like if you've been quarantined for 3 months and you've been staying at home and you're wearing a mask everywhere you go and you're wearing hand sanitizer around your neck like me, we're supposed to see the other side of this. We're supposed to make it through this. We put all of these safeguards in place for us to survive COVID. So what is the world going to be like for our kids on the other side of it if we don't somehow keep them going during the pandemic? What are they like on the other side? How far behind are they? How will they catch up? These are all questions that we've been asking. So we've really been trying to be as proactive about that as we can. We don't want to cross that bridge when we get to it. We don't want to have to cross that bridge at all. We don't want this to become a big pond that these kids have to cross anyway. We want them to stay at grade level. We want them to exceed it. We want them to stay competitive with other kids across the country. So between building a school in real life on that corner and then building the online tutoring program, I've been fairly busy.
Brad, I don't know how you edited this movie. I mean, this is you ask a question and you get a answer that is so rich and so fulfilling. Thank you so much, Tamar. This is really inspiring, and it's really an amazing work that you're doing.
Now you see why I talked for 2 hours on the back porch, right? Now you see it was a lot to explain.
We're gonna need more tape here.
Yeah.
Let me ask another question in another direction. I mean, part of this inspiration and everything that's leading you and driving you, and something that we see in your film, where does that connect to your Judaism? How much of that is a source? And one of the interesting elements that I found is that as I was watching the film, I was thinking to myself that this drive and the concept of tikkun olam, those are concepts that exist in every religion, I hope, and I think. In most religions, these concepts of making the world a better place. I think that's one of the things that religion was meant to do. Where do you see your Judaism being different than, say, other people from your community who are not coming with the Jewish background?
I think everything emanates from my Judaism. I mean, I have a Jewish soul. So before my mother knew whether or not I was a boy or a girl, she knew that I was a Jew already. So, but my Judaism is the kind of Judaism that I had to fight for it. At every step, at every moment of my life, I've had to fight for it, even in this very moment. It's always been, how are you Black and you're Jewish at the same time? How can you be that? And that didn't just come from Ashkenazi Jews, that came from Black people that weren't Jewish as well. How can this possibly be? You're Black, you can't be Jewish. I've always had to fight for it. I've had to fight, I've had to explain it. I've had to defend it every step of the way. And the more that you fight for it, the more that you defend it, the more you own it. It becomes you become it, it is me. So everything about me comes from that. There are a lot of Black people who have organizations who want to stop violence, who live in the same community that I live in. But for some reason, the way that I approached it looked different. It feels different because I'm different. So the outcome is going to be different because it's not an option. Judaism doesn't necessarily give you options. It's not like that. It's not like other religions that just say, hey, you can or you can't, you will or you won't. No, there are mitzvot, there are commandments. These are things you are commanded to do. It's not optional. And if you want to be a good Jew, you try to tackle as many of these things as you possibly can. And so it's no mistake. God didn't make any mistakes on me. I was born exactly the way that I was supposed to be born, Black, a woman, and a Jew. Because I needed to be able to see gun violence and poverty. I needed to be able to see that from a different perspective than anybody else. A Jew needed to be able to sit on the corner of 75th and Stewart and blend in with everybody else and say, okay, this is how we can fix this. Because sometimes if you don't have that outlook, if you haven't seen Jews overcome time and time again, and you know that you come from a group of people who are survivors, you don't believe that you can survive anything. You don't believe that you can conquer anything. You don't believe it, because how would you? Where would you get that from? But me being Jewish, I understand our history. And I know that, hey, we've overcome time and time again. How many times that different cultures and different people tried to wipe us out, and we just won't go away because we survive, because we can survive anything, even gun violence, even poverty. We can survive this. We can figure this out because that's what we do. That's what we do better than anybody else. And so I think I took that way of thinking to that corner with me. It is that spirit of survival, that spirit of I know that God wouldn't have brought me here if I wasn't supposed to be here. This is a crack. And I think I said it in the movie over and over again because I live by it. It's a crack. I don't necessarily see problems like everybody else sees them. They're cracks. They're all just cracks and they can be fixed. You just have to fix them. You have to have the right tools to fix them with. And the thing is, what I've learned on that block about Tikkun Olam is fixing the world is a very big place. It's very, very big. Lots of people, very, very big. It is not just the responsibility of the Jew to fix the world because we aren't the only ones that live here. The same way, it's not just your responsibility to clean your home after your kids. You teach your kids to clean up behind themselves, no? That's exactly how this goes. We have to invite our Muslim friends and our Christian friends and everybody else in to help us do the work of repairing the world because it's such a big job. It can't just be for us. It has to be for everybody. And that is the job of the Jewish people, of Jews who understand that, to invite people in to doing that work with us. It's not for us to do it. It's for us to teach other people how to do it and for us to all do it together collectively. I don't go and sit on that corner so people can say, hey, you know what? You're doing a wonderful job. So proud of you. Yasher Koach. I don't do it for that. I do it because I'm trying to show you how we can fix the problem. I'm showing you how to do it. I'm not telling you how to do it. I am showing you how we can fix this problem. I want you to do this. I don't want you, you don't have to come to where I'm at and do it. You can do it at your own house, on your own porch, on your own corner. You don't have to come here. I'm just showing you how to do it. I'm not gonna ask you to do something that I've never done. I'm not gonna do something, I'm not gonna preach about something that I won't do. So basically anything that I suggest, I've already tried it. I've tried it, I understand why it works and why it don't work, I get it. And before I introduce it to anyone else, I'm gonna make sure that I've done all the research, I've done all my homework. And that's what this is like for me. So, I mean, Judaism is, I can't separate that from anything. It's everything. It's me. It's who I am. And so it's kind of like, you know, I see why Jews don't have to proselytize now. Because when you do Judaism the right way, oh no, people will want to know, why do you do this? How do you do this? How can I do this? How can I be like this? Anytime somebody asks me about a mezuzah or a Magen David or my name in Hebrew or something like that, and we have a conversation about Judaism, and they're intrigued, and it's like another option because Black people don't. We've had limited religious options, and it's like, wait, I can do this. Yes, you can do this. It's not just for white people. Yes, you can do this. And the fact that I can have those kind of dialogues with people, it helps me understand I'm on the right path. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. Did that answer your question?
I have so much more to ask. It made me have more questions, but maybe that's a Jewish thing. Brad, let me ask you that, has this film, I know this film showed at the New York Jewish Film Festival, and I saw Aviva's here with us, Aviva Weintraub from the festival is here with us tonight. I was wondering, has this shown to other communities? Has it been shown outside of the Jewish community?
Yeah, so after the film premiered at the New York Jewish Film Festival, thank you, Aviva. I know that you're here and I appreciate you being here. The film screened, well, it was accepted to a couple of film festivals and then the pandemic hit. So a lot of the festivals got canceled and some went virtual. It screened virtually at the Cleveland International Film Festival. And that was the first non-Jewish film festival or general film festival that it screened at. And now it was accepted in a few other Jewish film festivals, Washington, which didn't happen. And then there are a few others that are upcoming. I'm not sure if I can talk about them yet because I don't know if they've been announced, but there are other Jewish film festivals where it will be screening either virtually or hopefully one day again in person.
So one of the interesting things that I would love to explore and Tamar, especially get your take on. I think for too long, the Jewish community has been riding the coattails of Heschel and MLK and saying that there's some sort of great relationship. And I personally and others have said that the Black-Jewish relationship is broken. And I would love to know what you think and what's your perspective on, I guess, Black Jewish Ashkenazi relations.
We have to get past Rabbi Heschel and MLK. We have to do better than that. It can't, like right now, like it needs to be like it's Tamar and Brad. Like we're the next King and Heschel, right? Like it has to be so common that there are friendships like that they're unremarkable, but it's not. We're still talking about something that happened 60 years ago, 50 years ago. We're still talking about that relationship. I would hope that there would have been some member of the Black community and some member of the Jewish community that's been friends since Heschel and King. But it doesn't look like it. So now me and Brad are going to do that. But I digress. But I think that we're all Americans. And America has a way of getting into all of us. It's in everybody's blood. It's in all of our brains. It just is. It is. And we are all kind of affected by the same sicknesses in America. Racism, all of it. We have it. Just because we're Jews, it doesn't mean that we don't have it. We live in communities. Chicago is very segregated. I live in a community with mostly Black people. We typically live separately here. And it's like that in a lot of places. People feel more comfortable being around people that look like them. And Jews are no different. Black ones or white ones, we're not different. And we think that we are, but we're not. We're not. And it's kind of like we have to face that in order to get to the next level. Because the thing that I've realized that I've learned in my life, it seems like Ashkenazi Jews are a lot more comfortable with Black people who are not Jewish than they are with Black people who are Jewish. And that has always been a problem for me. Because the thing is, you have to see me. We have to be equals in this. And if I'm just Black, then I'm not Jewish. And that's easier for most people to deal with. And this is something, I mean, my whole life, I've paid attention to this very closely. It's easier to interact with people who are just Black and they aren't also Jewish. It's easier. It seems to be an easier thing. But the road to fixing the relationship between the Jewish community and the Black community, the Black non-Jewish community, it has to go through Black Jews. It can't go over us. It can't go around us. It can't go under us. It has to go through us. So the relationship between the Jewish community has to be healed within itself first before it can be healed without. So the relationship between Black Jews and Ashkenazi Jews has to become a whole lot more cohesive, a whole lot closer than what we are. We have to have deeper conversations. We have to have more meaningful relationships than what we have in order for the Black community to trust the Jewish community. Because if Black Jews don't trust other Jews, then why would the rest of the Black community trust Jews? And I think most people don't get that. And it's a very hard thing for them to do. And I see it a lot here in Chicago. There are a lot of rabbis who would much rather deal with Black pastors than they would me. Now, for what reason? I don't know. I never even experienced anti-Semitism until I started Mass. I mean, I knew what sexism felt like. I knew what racism felt like, but I didn't understand exactly what anti-Semitism felt like because I'm Black and I'm a woman. You don't get to dislike me because I'm a Jew. Sorry, that's just not an option. I already got it bad enough. You don't get to do that. But I've seen a lot of that in Chicago. I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot about people. I've learned a lot about myself. I've learned a lot about this culture and this religion and other people I share it with. I've learned a lot about that in the past 7 years. And the thing is, that's where the relationship starts. The relationship starts between Black Jews and the rest of the Jewish community. You can't ignore, and it's not just Jews of color. I'm talking specifically Black Jews African American Jews, not just Jews of color. It has to be something that breaks down those American racial barriers that we have. And it's that black and white construct. It has to be broken down. And we just all have to be Jews. And people often ask, hey, so, like, what kind of Jew are you? A really pretty one? That's what kind I am. That's what kind. That's it. I don't want to be labeled as anything, as any kind of Jew. I just want to be a Jew like every other Jew. That's it. That's how we have to see each other.
I want to take some questions from the audience. I've asked enough. I have a lot more, but let's start with Gretich is our first question. Gretich, you're on. Gretchen, sorry, Gretchen.
That's okay. Yeah. Can you hear me? All right. Tamar, you probably hear how inspirational you are all the time, and you've pretty much already answered my question on how to get the community engaged. I'm sure anybody who listens to you just pretty much does whatever you want them to do. But my question is, what is your advice for getting the community involved with your efforts? What was successful for you?
I think honestly, people are good. I think people are, for the most part, good. And I know that the times we live in really challenges that statement, but I think that people are good. And I think most people want to help. And I think if you give them a way that they can help, they will take advantage of that. They will do it. Nobody wants to just jump in and do something for somebody that they don't need to be, they don't need done. They don't want to come in and fix the problem that's not there. They want to come in and help. They want to come in and have a relationship with the people who need the help, right? So what we did was basically, we built a place or a space where people could come and help, where people could come and meet each other. It's not your space, it's not my space, it's our space. It's not your temple, it's not my church, it's not your house, it's not my house. It's this very neutral space where anybody can come. And it's there every day. From this time, from 4 o'clock to 8 o'clock, you know that we're going to be here and this is what we're going to be doing. And anybody who wants to show up can show up. It doesn't matter your denomination. It doesn't matter your race. It doesn't matter. None of that matters. None of your sexual orientation. Anybody can come. And you have to create more spaces that are open and welcoming like that, where people don't feel judged, where they don't feel like, they're in a job interview or something like that, where people can just come and be people and just meet each other wherever it is that they are. And if you build spaces like that, people will come. They will show up. And I mean, basically ours was just a barbecue. It's like every day is just like, we hang out and we cook dinner and we do karaoke and we might get mani-pedis, and you just create spaces where people can come and hang out and just talk to each other. I'm not trying to get you to be anything. I don't want you to join my club. You don't want me to join yours. We don't have to talk about what college we went to. We don't have to talk about our friends. We can just talk about our kids. We can talk about cars that just drove by. We can talk about whatever. You just need to create a safe space where people can come to, where they know that they're safe to share their ideas and to be who they are. So that's kind of like what we've done. That's all I've done. And no, everybody doesn't do what I tell them to do. I have 2 kids and 2 dogs, and no one listens ever. So
Good.
was that
alone.
What was that?
I'm not alone. Good.
Yeah. So that's what it is. Just setting up spaces, just creating spaces where people can come and just be who they are. That's it.
Let's take a question. First of all, if you have questions and you want to put them in the chat, we can then call on you. But let's take a question now from Alice. Alice, you're on.
I just was wondering if, I know in the film, someone was trying to convince you to enter politics, and there's so many young people, people of color, exciting people who sort of bypassed all these traditions and went right to the people and got elected, AOC and recently Jamal Bowman. And, do you have that? Do you see that as a possibility for yourself? You're so magnetic. People are drawn to you. You know how to reach them. It seems that you'd be natural for that.
Politics. I don't know. I might break my mother's heart if I got into politics. I don't know. I mean, I'm a good girl right now. I don't know if I'm ready for Chicago politics. You know what? I'm not sure. One day I'll probably do something more political than what I do one day. But and I see it coming, especially now with everything that's happened with all of the unrest in this country and what's happened with the pandemic. And I mean, just our leadership, our local leadership is, I mean, I don't even know. I don't know where they are. They all just disappeared. Nobody's been saying anything. So people are just kind of out here and they don't know what to do. They don't know what's going on. Really, it's not a lot of information and people are just kind of making it up as they go along. And even the people who are, the heads of, like, city government and our aldermen, nobody has a clear message. Nobody is really saying anything. Everybody is kind of on the fence. And this is not the time to be on the fence. This is not the time for that. It has to be one of the other right now. Either you're with the people or you are not with the people. You have to pick a side. And most politicians can't do that. And right now, you can't be a politician. You just have to be one of the people. So who are you going to represent? And we have, most of our politicians have been very silent on that. They won't be pressed on that issue. And it's kind of like, there are solutions, but then they aren't solutions. And I mean, like, I have a hard time believing that as many people who have been murdered, who have been shot by police, as many times as this has happened, as many times as we've marched and rallied and hashtag, nobody thought about how we were going to fix this problem when it came again. How after Mike Brown, nobody said, hey, these are the reforms that we need. How, and after Sandra Bland, nobody said, hey, these are the reforms we need. Why is it that no one ever thought about this in between those times? If we know that it's going to keep happening, and it keeps happening because no one's actually doing anything to stop it, wouldn't you think that somebody would come up with a way to stop it? So that's what I'm looking for right now in our leaders and in politicians, and that's just not what we're getting right now. So do I see myself becoming a politician one day? Perhaps, maybe. Is that day like one day soon? Probably not, though.
Maybe a talk show host before that. Maybe
Perhaps. Maybe.
Yeah.
We have a question from Bev. Bev, you're on.
Hi, Tamar.
Hey, Bev. I know Bev. Bev's my friend.
Hi, thank you, dear. Have you gotten any help from the government, from the city government at all? I don't think Ram was very helpful, but what about Lori Lightfoot?
She's even less helpful. She's even less helpful. Less. Can you imagine someone being less helpful than Ram? Yes, imagine it, because it's real. I don't understand exactly what's going on here. Chicago has always been it's a very political town, and the politics here are dirty, and it's a lot of bodies buried in a lot of places in this city, and a lot of people have, I mean, alliances and allegiances and secrets and backroom deals and all sorts of shady stuff going on. And right now, it seems to me like it kind of seems to me like the police kind of run the city, kind of, and it's not a whole lot that the mayor can do. So I don't think that the police don't necessarily support they don't support what we do. Think about it. In 6 years, we haven't, I mean, if anyone understands defunding the police, it would be mass. In 6 years, we haven't called the police for any help on that block. And we've seen everything on that corner. And we've never dialed 911 in 6 years. So we know how to survive without the police. We know how to do that. I can't say that about the rest of the city, but we know how to do it. And the police know that we know how to do it. And what happens if groups like ours start teaching people all over the city and all over the country how to survive with less police? How? What happens then? They lose jobs. It upsets somebody's apple cart. So it's not necessarily good for business that we're out there. So it's like you aren't going to get any help with anything that's going to upset city government, that's going to upset the balance of power in the city. So what we do, they're not going to encourage that. Have you ever seen a mayor come down to the block and eat a hot dog? Never, never. Hasn't happened in all these years. It has not happened. And they know where we are every single day, and it has never happened. The alderman doesn't even come there. Every day we're there, and it has never happened. They don't support what we do, which means normally that we're doing the right thing. If we got too much support from the city, I'd be nervous.
We're gonna have time for 2 more questions. We got a question from Jules. Jules.
Oh, hi, Tamar. In the film, you run up against a roadblock in your quest to become a rabbi, when in fact, since rabbi does mean teacher, you're already a rabbi. But are you still facing institutional prejudice against your becoming a rabbi?
You know, I believe so, but I've actually had a conversation with a couple of people, and we're actually looking at potentially an October ordination. If the world is still here, of course, because I don't know, with the way things are going, who knows what's going to happen? I mean, I don't know, but that's potentially what we're looking at. But that's one of those things I won't actually believe until I see. But you know, I'm not holding out for it. That's not what makes me, like you said, I'm already a teacher. That's not what makes me who I am. God doesn't call the qualified, he qualifies the called. So I don't necessarily need anybody's, no one needs to lay hands on me, or nobody needs to, I don't necessarily need that. I don't need anybody's approval or anybody's blessing to do anything that I do. I've been doing it for this long, so hey, what's another 20 or 30 years?
Just before we take the last question from Laurel, I want to ask Brad a question, because Brad, you've been, you know, your screen's gone to sleep already.
I've been out for a while, I think.
Let me. I want to ask about the title. How you chose the title of the film?
Oh, that's a great question. The title of the film, They Ain't Ready for Me, is a line in a song. And at the 4th of July party on the block, Tamar and Kendra were dancing to that song, and the line, and I heard the line, They Ain't Ready for Me, and I said, that's the name of the film. And I walked up to Tamar and I said, this is what we're calling it. And she looked at me, she's like, yes, this is what we're calling it.
I'm a big Bruno Mars fan.
Yeah.
Big Bruno Mars fan. Yeah. So yes. Yeah. And
I just heard it and I was like, perfect.
He was like, it's perfect. And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. When he came up to me, he's like, this is the movie. This is the name of the movie. And I'm like, what's the name of the movie? I don't understand. What are you saying right now? Yeah, it was pretty perfect.
Drinking to Bruno Mars. Got it. Before we get to the last question from Laurel, this actually, her question relates to an important topic, and right now our community is really coming together, and I am really proud of how our community has been standing up in the last few weeks, and this film in some ways just became so much more topical because of these statues of the Confederate military. Laura, I'll let you ask your question. Laura, you're on.
She's muted.
Are we unmuting Laurel? Or Laurel, have you unmuted? If not, I will ask the question.
Well, let
Oh,
me.
she's unmuted now.
There you go. Laurel, you're on.
I have a son who lives in North Carolina, in Raleigh, and he's been at all the protests and tearing down the statues. And I was very touched by your trip with your mother to Charlotte. And you almost seemed incredulous when you saw the statues of the Confederate soldiers there. I'm from New York, and I see what's happening at the museum. So, but there's a statue in Boston that they want to take down, which is a Northern statue of a white leader. I think there was a movie made from it, with Black Northern soldiers. And so do we get kind of carried away beyond reason when the pendulum goes one way or the other, and how do we balance it?
That is a very good question. I have to think about that one for a second. How do we balance that? I think imagery is important. I think it's very, very important. It says a lot. And anytime you have statues where the way that I talked about it in the movie is, imagine Israelites becoming free but never leaving Egypt, and everywhere you go there are monuments to Pharaoh everywhere, and you don't actually ever become the Jewish people, you just become Egyptians. That's kind of what happened to Black people. So when we see a white man on a horse, but he's flanked by his Black body man or a Black buffalo soldier who's on foot, we know what that soldier was experiencing, how different the experience for that Black soldier was than it was for that white soldier on the horse. It was a completely different kind of thing going on. They had two different kinds of experiences. And Black people haven't forgotten that. And white Northerners who are descendants of those people and white Southerners who are descendants of those people, they know the experience that their ancestors had, just like we know the experience that our ancestors had. So when I see statues like that, I don't just see a statue, I see their experiences. And do I really want the world to look like this going forward? How would I feel about my son being the Black soldier in that monument, looking up to the white soldier on the horse? How would I feel about that right now? Do they both not risk their lives going to war? Is that somehow, is one's loss of life more or less than the other? So it's not just about the past, it's about how these things influence the future. So I think I'm at the point pretty much where, honestly, pretty much all of them can go, as long as they leave the Jim Henson and Kermit the Frog statue alone and Mr. Rogers. Everybody else can kind of go. That's where I'm at with the whole thing right now.
Guys, this is really fabulous, and I know there's so much more to ask and so much more to discuss. Tell us where they could find out more. I think a lot of people are going to want to see this film. What can you tell us?
We have a Facebook page, so you can go to They Ain't Ready For Me on Facebook. You could also check out Menemsha Films, their website, their Facebook page, and there'll be announcements about future screenings around the country over the next couple of months.
Fabulous. And Tamar, we have shared in the chat, but just so everybody hears it, ontheblock.org. That's
Yes.
the place to learn more and contribute and to support. And please do.
Thank you. And sorry, guys, sorry I'm distracted. There are a lot of fireworks or gunshots or something going on out here. So I'm kind of sitting in front of the window. So I've kind of been listening and talking at the same time. I'm sorry about that. But when we're all together in the same room, which I hope will be one day soon, it'll be so much better. Things will go, it'll be so much smoother. But thank you for having me. Thank you for showing up. I really do appreciate this. This is beautiful.
Thank you both.
And thanks to Isaac and to the team at the JCC for hosting us.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you guys.
Really proud and honored to do this, and I'm truly humbled. Folks, please join us next week for the screening of Tahara. I think it connects back. It also focuses on a character of who's a Black Jewish young woman at a Hebrew school. Beautiful film that was at the Slamdance Film Festival. And then also check out the screening of No Small Matter, and all of our screenings that are coming up from now through July at jccfilm.org.